You know I love everybody deep down in my heart, Lord. You know I love everybody deep down in my heart, Lord. You know I love everybody deep down in my heart. Amen, amen, amen.
I'm going to use this stone because it's part of the story, but it also helps me with my ballads. And since I left a cane yesterday in Peterborough and someone had to return it to me before I left town, this is a good option. My name is Donna Burdick. I am the town historian for the town of Smithfield in Madison County, which is Peterborough, New York, about 67 miles north of here. And I thank all of you for attending today. Before I begin, I would like to thank several different people and organizations. First of all, the Upper Lisle Cemetery Association, especially David and Denise Ross, for their work and cooperation, and for allowing us to set the stone in the cemetery. Triangle Town Clerk, Sandy Martin, for the vital records that she provided to me, and also Town Historian Juanita Aliba for telling me where the Hill and Waverly families lived when in Whitney Point. The Smithfield Community Association in Peterborough for approving this project. The Emancipation Day Committee of Peterborough for all of their help. They're always agreeable to any idea that I come up with, and I've had some gems. And this one took a lot of work on their part, and I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. The descendants of the Russell family who are here today, and Brenda Cave James, who also went with me, came to the cemetery years ago, motivated me to do something about Emily, to recognize her, and I thank you, Brenda. Thank you. I would like to introduce, before we begin, and she has a lot of family with her today, but I'm just going to keep it simple. I would like to introduce to you Carol Waverly Shank, who is the great-great-granddaughter of Emily Russell Hill.
First of all, I'd just like to say I'm glad to be here this afternoon and seeing a lot of relatives that I never knew I had. So that's a good thing. And I'm glad for my family being here. But mainly, my family and I would like to thank the Smithfield Community Association for donating the gravestone in memory of my great-great-grandmother, Emily Russell Hill. And I thank you very much. We all thank you.
Thank you. We're going to call Carol up here again later for another part of this. But I'll try to keep this rather brief, and some of you may have heard a little bit of this before. I hope I can throw in a few extra little bits of information. The person we recognize today is Emily Russell Hill, and this is her stone to the right. She was born enslaved, as were her father and mother, Samuel and Harriet Sims Russell. The parents were born in Maryland, and they were the property of William Frisbee Fitzhugh, whose plantation, The Hive, is located about 6 miles east of Hagerstown, Maryland. And if you know, Hagerstown is very, very close to the southern border of Pennsylvania. William Fitzhugh had a son named James, and he moved to Kentucky in the early 1820s, taking with him the slave Samuel Russell. James' sister Anne actually owned Harriet, and she agreed that James could take Harriet along with him to Kentucky because Samuel and Harriet had formed an attachment and they wanted to marry. They first were, of course, the property of James in Kentucky. It's Ohio County, Kentucky, which is kind of the central western part of the state of Kentucky. However, James fell into hard times and he had to sell Samuel and Harriet to a man by the name of Gabriel Jackson. I don't know where Jackson was located. In turn, Jackson sold them to Samuel Worthington, who was a cotton planter in Washington County, Mississippi. And this is kind of in the middle portion of Mississippi, right along the Mississippi River. In 1841, Anne Fitzhugh, who was married to the abolitionist Gerrit Smith of Peterborough, New York, expressed a desire to find Samuel and Harriet. She knew that they were somewhere. She also probably knew by then that they weren't with her brother anymore. And she asked her husband, Gerrit, well, let's see if we can find this family and free them. So they hired a Quaker abolitionist named James Canning Fuller to go south to find the family. And when he found them, there were 5 children to add to the family. They were Mary, aged 14, Emily, 12, William, 10, Richard, 3.5, and Malvina, aged 15 months. Although records vary later on, I think all 5 were born in the state of Kentucky. Sometimes Emily says other things. Sometimes her older sister Mary says other things in the census records. But in 1850, when they were all together with the parents in Peterborough, they all say Kentucky. So I kind of go with that. I think that might be the correct place. Negotiations were made, and Worthington received $3,500 for the family, and that would be about $245,000 today. Samuel and Harriet and their children settled in Peterborough. Soon after, Harriet's father, William Sims, was freed and brought from Maryland. In 1842, Harriet gave birth to one more child, a son. Gerrit Smith wanted Harriet to name him Freeborn Russell, but she said, no, I'm naming him Gerrit Smith Russell. Samuel passed away in 1857, and Harriet in 1886. I spent a number of years researching all 6 of these children. I found them all. I found that they were all buried at Peterborough, except I couldn't find Emily, and it just bugged me. I had to find Emily. And the last record I had of her was in Canastota, New York, which is about 9 miles north of Peterborough. That's one place you probably do know of, on Route 5 and the Thruway, even if you don't know where Peterborough is. And they were there in 1880. She and her husband, Moses Hill, who was a hostler, taking care of horses in an inn or a hotel. But after that, I couldn't find them. And, at least 10 years ago, I was in the Broome County Library upstairs. For those of us who know Broome County, they have the historical section, the Historical Society. And I asked them if they had anything on the Underground Railroad. Oh yes, we have a folder. I said, well, could I look at it? At the time, I think I was just trying to find people who had come through Broome County and maybe made their way to Peterborough on the Underground Railroad. So I came across an article from the year 1929, and it said that a woman named Mary Newcomb, who lived on Collins Street in Whitney Point, had a woman who had worked for her as a laundress or a domestic named Emily Hill. Well, actually, I'm ahead of myself. The article really never gave a name. Here's what the article said. The servant of the Seymour family was a liberated negress. Of course, she was, by the time this article is 1929, she had been dead since 1922. She's a liberated negress. Gerrit Smith bought the father and the mother of the servant, took them to Peterborough, and purchased for them a farm. That wasn't exactly correct, but it was good enough for me because I just knew that had to be Emily Russell. There was nothing, her liberated negress, that's all it said. So as soon as I read it, I started going through census records. I found this woman named Emily Hill. She's living with her husband Moses one time in 1892. She's in some other census records. And she has these 2 grandsons. Gerrit Smith Waverly and Richard Waverly. And I thought, wait a minute, Emily had 2 brothers named Gerrit Smith. Russell and Richard Russell. There's got to be a connection. Then I went to the town clerk. The town clerk got a death certificate for me. What does it say? Emily Hill, mother, I'll go in the order it's usually listed. Father, Samuel Russell, mother, Harriet Sims. I had it. There she was, buried at Upper Lisle Cemetery. So what had happened was she and Moses came here from Madison County by 1892. They followed Mary, who was their only child, to Broome County. Mary was the wife of George Waverly. This is George and Mary Stone. George was a farmer in Upper Lisle. Emily was widowed by 1900. She died at the home of her grandson, Gerrit, who was usually known as Gary Waverly, on February 5th, 1922, and was buried at Upper Lisle Cemetery. Also, I wanted, I had said that these two brothers of Emily were in the 8th Regiment of the United States Colored Troops. There happens to be another stone just to the right of Emily of a man from the Carter family, African-American family. He was also in the United States Colored Troops. He wasn't in the 8th Regiment, however. But Mary died in the town of Triangle in 1927. Now, her death year is not on the stone, so perhaps that's something that will happen at some point. But my whole goal was I wanted these people to be remembered. So many of them never had gravestones. So many of them, people just didn't even know they existed. I wanted her to be remembered. And then all of the other members of her family now have gravestones in the Peterborough Cemetery. Some of them have just recently been installed in the last few years. So that was just something that was really important to me. Another strange little coincidence is that Upper Lisle happens to be in the Whitney Point School District, and I taught in this district for 29 years. So it's kind of a strange thing. But especially meaningful to me, the most important thing of all throughout this whole thing was that I met Carol Waverly Shake. And that tied it all together. Thank you. Thank you for coming. And I have two final things that I want to ask of a couple of people. And one is Max Smith, who's the co-chair of the Emancipation Day Committee, along with Jim Corpin, who came down. And Jim is, by the way, he's a cousin of all of the people who are here, whose names I'll never remember again. See, I told you, modern day, I can't remember names. I know all the old ones. But anyway, Max and Jim are the co-chairs. Max is a cousin, directly descended from the Russell family, and as it turns out, Max is also your cousin from Laban Olby, who's buried in Brisbane, New York. So I'm still on the trail. And Max is going to do a tribute in memory of Emily, something that he does in Peterborough almost every year.
It's particularly meaningful to be here today. Jim and I came down on Friday and placed the stone, which was frankly later than we wanted to do it, but it was a little late getting here. And what a wonderful drive it was, and I was looking forward to having the opportunity to meet all of you and to be here for this. That these folks who were born in slavery came to this area and were able to live out their lives as free people, enjoying as full as they could this American dream, this experience that the next generations will be better, still resonates so much with me today. And so from time to time, I sing songs, the songs of slavery. We know them as spirituals. I call them slave songs. And there's one that is, I think, particularly relevant in this context, that this was a person who came out of slavery to freedom. When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell Lord Pharaoh to let my people go. Thus saith the Lord, bold Moses said, let my people go. I'll strike your firstborn dead. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. Thank you.
We have one last thing. I would like to ask Carol Waverly Shank to read the inscription on her great-great-grandmother's stone.
Emily Russell Hill, December 4th, 1828. February 5th, 1922. Born into slavery, died a free woman.
Amen.
Oh, I love everybody deep down in my heart. Lord, you know I love everybody deep down in my heart. Lord, you know I love everybody deep down in my heart. Amen, amen, amen. Lord, you know I love my preacher deep down in my heart. Lord, you know I love my preacher deep down in my heart. Lord, you know I love my preacher deep down in my heart. Amen, amen, amen.